My wife betrayed me with her childhood friend, and we fought over a $250, $0 inheritance, only to find out she secretly transferred everything into her sister's name just before filing for divorce. Now I'm losing everything. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife turned out to be the biggest liar and cheat I've ever known. I mean, everything seemed fine, at least on the surface. We had our routine. She'd complain about work, I'd come home tired but happy to see her. But all that changed suddenly, and I didn't even realize what was happening until it was too late. The most shocking part, it all came crashing down over a damn inheritance and a betrayal I never saw coming. It started about 6 months ago. Had been acting a little off, distracted, secretive. She'd hide her phone when I walked into the room, and sometimes I'd catch her deleting messages or clearing her browser history. I didn't think much of it at first. We had our disagreements, sure, but nothing that screamed cheating. Still, I noticed she was more anxious than usual, snapping at me over small things, her eyes darting around like she was hiding something. I chalked it up to stress, work deadlines, family drama, but deep down I felt like I was missing something. Then came the day I found the first real clue. I was in the study looking for my keys and I saw her laptop open on the desk. I usually check her email just to be sure she's not hiding anything, but I'd never found anything suspicious before. This time, I noticed a folder labeled photos and opened it. Inside were pictures of her with a guy I didn't know, her childhood friend. They were at a bar, smiling, holding drinks, leaning into each other a little too close. My stomach sank. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't jump to conclusions right away. I needed proof, so I started digging. Over the next few days, I found more. Texts, calls, late-night hangouts, stuff she'd doing. She told me she was just catching up with an old friend that was like a brother. But the messages told a different story. They were flirty, intimate, full of plans to meet up when she was supposed to be working late. She'd been lying to my face for months and I didn't even know it. One night I decided to confront her. I waited until she came home from work, heart pounding, hands sweaty. She walked in, all bitchy attitude, trying to brush past me like I wasn't there. I blocked her path and showed her the photos. Her face went pale for a second, just a flicker. Then she blinked, composed herself, and started lying. "That's nothing," she snapped. "It's just he's harmless, you're overreacting." But I wasn't buying it. I could see it in her eyes, the guilt, the panic. She was caught and she knew it. Her excuses were pathetic. She claimed they were just friends, that she never cheated, that I was paranoid. She said was just a rebound from a bad breakup, that she hadn't done anything serious. But I knew better. I saw the way she looked at him in those pictures, and I knew she'd been sneaking around for months. The worst part, I felt betrayed not just because she cheated, but because she lied so effortlessly. It was like I was invisible to her, like I didn't matter anymore. That night after she went to bed, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the ceiling. My mind was racing. I felt a mix of rage, sadness, and confusion. How could she do this? How could she lie to me for so long? We had built a life together, money, a house, plans for the future, and now it all felt like it was crumbling. I couldn't sleep. All I kept thinking about was how I'd been played, how I'd trusted her, and she'd thrown it all away for some stupid affair. Over the next few days, I started noticing even more signs. She was secretive about her phone, always taking calls in the bathroom or outside. She suddenly became obsessed with money, asking about our savings, talking about her sister's needs, and acting like she was planning something. I found out she'd been secretly transferring money into her sister's account just before she started talking about divorce. That was weird enough, but then I looked into our inheritance, 250 from my grandfather, and I discovered she'd transferred everything into her sister's name just days before she filed for divorce. That was the point where everything exploded. I felt like I'd been sucker punched again. Not only had she cheated, lied, and manipulated me, but she'd also been planning to take everything I worked for. It was like she was trying to steal my future right under my nose. That's when I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had no idea how deep her lies went, but I was about to find out. And trust me, it was going to get ugly. After discovering what she had done, transferring all our inheritance into her sister's name just before she filed for divorce. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was financial, calculated, and cold. I couldn't wrap my head around how she managed to pull it off so smoothly, lying through her teeth, pretending everything was fine. I started digging deeper, and what I found made me angrier than I'd ever been in my life. I decided I needed to confront her again, but this time with proof. I sat her down in the living room, her face already tense, probably sensing I knew something big. I laid out everything: photos, texts, the transfer of money, the fact that she'd transferred our entire inheritance into her sister's account. Her reaction was a mix of shock and anger, but mostly she tried to spin it like she wasn't doing anything wrong, like I was overreacting. "You don't understand, Jason," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "This is none of your business. You're just being paranoid because I'm tired of your accusations. Just a friend, I never cheated on you. And that money, it's just a safety net in case I need it. You think I'm some kind of gold digger." "Please?" I looked at her, seeing the bitchy smirk she always wore when she was trying to manipulate me. She had this way of twisting everything to make herself look innocent, like I was the one losing my mind. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I'd seen enough. The truth was clear, and her lies were so thick I could see right through them. I felt a mix of heartbreak and rage. How could she treat me this way? After everything we'd been through, our wedding, the vacations, building a life, I was just some fool she used to get what she wanted. And what she wanted was the inheritance, the money I'd worked my whole life for, and a clean way out of the marriage. She was planning her escape, and I was just a pawn in her game. I told her I'd be calling the lawyer, that I was going to fight for my rights and get to the bottom of her schemes. Her face twisted into a sneer. "Good luck with that," she spat. "You're wasting your time. You're not getting any of that money back. I've already moved everything into my sister's name. You're going to lose everything: your house, your savings, everything. And honestly, I don't care. I don't love you anymore, Jason. I just want out." That was the moment I realized how deep her betrayal went. She planned this all along, using me, lying to my face, and secretly transferring our wealth just so she could walk away free. The worst part, I still loved her. I still wanted to believe there was some way to fix this, to save what was left of our marriage. But her words, her actions, they proved otherwise. She was done with me, and she had been for a long time. Over the next few days, I started noticing other things. She was even more secretive, hiding her phone constantly, deleting messages, and talking about moving out. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with stealing everything I'd worked for. I contacted a lawyer, and we began to prepare for a fight, not just over the marriage, but over the inheritance and her sneaky transfers. Meanwhile, kept up her act, acting like she was the innocent victim, playing the "I don't know what you're talking about" card. She threw around accusations, saying I was controlling, paranoid, and jealous. But I knew better. I knew she had been lying to me from the start, and now I was stuck trying to piece together just how deep her lies went. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. I started to see her true colors: bitchy, manipulative, and totally willing to screw me over just to get what she wanted. She lied about everything, even her feelings. I wondered how many nights she'd spent with, how many times she'd been with him while pretending to be the perfect wife. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. And through all this, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I realized I'd been blind, trusting her blindly, thinking we had something real. Turns out she was just using me for the money, for her own selfish reasons. That realization hit hard. I'd given her everything: my love, my trust, and she'd thrown it all away for some guy and a quick way out. Now I'm stuck in a mess I don't know how to fix. I've got a lawyer on retainer, a mountain of evidence, and a decision to make. Do I fight for what's rightfully mine, or do I walk away and let her take what she wants? Honestly, I don't even know anymore. All I know is, I never expected my wife to turn into a liar and a thief, and I definitely never expected to feel this broken over it. After I gathered all the evidence and saw how far had gone to screw me over, I knew I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. The more I uncovered, the more I realized she had planned this entire thing for months. transferring the inheritance into her sister's name, lying about, and trying to keep me completely in the dark. It was a betrayal on a scale I couldn't even comprehend at first. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach every time I remembered her smirking, acting innocent, acting like I was the crazy one. I decided I needed to take action fast. I contacted a lawyer I found through a friend, someone who specialized in family law and financial disputes. I laid everything out: the inheritance, her transfer of assets, her affair, her lies. The lawyer listened patiently, then told me I had a good case to contest the transfer of assets, especially since she'd done it right before filing for divorce. That was a clear sign she was trying to hide her assets and cheat me out of what I deserved. While I was gathering the legal stuff, I also started digging into her phone, her emails, her social media accounts. I knew I was crossing a line, but I was desperate. I needed to know how deep her deception went. What I found was disturbing. She'd been talking to about leaving me, about starting fresh somewhere else, and how she was done with everything. She'd even been planning how to get rid of the house, the car, everything that tied her to me. And the worst, she'd been secretly making plans to move into her sister's place, taking all the money she could get and leaving me with nothing. I was furious, but I also felt sick. How could she do this? How could she lie for so long, pretend everything was perfect, then betray me like this? I kept replaying all the moments in our marriage where she'd been bitchy, dismissive, and downright cruel. I saw her sneer when I brought up finances, the way she'd belittle me when I asked questions about money. It all made sense now. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe even years, and I was just a pawn in her game. One night I confronted her again. I told her I knew everything about the transfer, about her plans. She looked at me with that same bitchy smirk, trying to deny everything. But I'd had enough of her lies. I threw all the evidence on the table: screenshots, bank statements, her messages. I told her I was going to fight for my rights, and I was going to stop her from taking everything I worked for. She snapped back at me, calling me controlling and paranoid. "You're just jealous," she spat. Jealous of my freedom. You don't own me, Jason. I don't care about the money or the house. I just want out." She said she'd been miserable, that I was a terrible husband, and that she'd been planning her escape for a long time. That's when I realized she'd been manipulating me from the start, convincing herself that she was the victim, that she was justified in everything she did. The more I pressed her, the more she tried to turn things around. She accused me of being possessive, of controlling her, of not trusting her. But I knew the truth now. She'd been lying to my face, cheating, stealing, everything you can think of. And the worst part, she still had the nerve to call herself the victim. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could I have been so blind? How could I have trusted someone who had been lying right under my nose? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything I'd lost: my wife, my trust, my money, my future. It was like my world was falling apart, piece by piece. I wondered if I'd ever be able to recover from this. I started questioning everything about my marriage, about who really was. And honestly, I felt like I was waking up from a nightmare I'd been living in for years. The next day, I decided I'd had enough of her bullshit. I told her I was filing for full custody of the house and the assets, and I was going to fight her for everything. I knew it wouldn't be easy, especially with her trying to hide her assets, but I was determined. I wanted justice, not just for myself, but for the fact that she'd tried to screw me over financially, emotionally, and morally. It was clear she wasn't going to change. She continued to act bitchy, dismissive, like she had all the power. But I wasn't going to let her win. She thought she could lie, cheat, and steal her way out of everything. Well, I was about to make sure she paid for every single lie, every betrayal, and every dollar she'd stolen from me. I knew it was going to be a long, ugly fight. But I was ready. I didn't deserve this, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The legal battle I started was a nightmare from the moment I filed. Of course, played the victim card. She spun stories about how I was abusive, controlling, and paranoid. She even claimed I was trying to ruin her reputation. It was classic lying, twisting everything to make herself look innocent. But I had the evidence, and I was determined to see this through. The transfers, the texts, the emails, They all painted a clear picture. She was scheming from the start. The first court hearing was a brutal wake-up call. Showed up looking all innocent, bitchy smirk intact, acting like she was the wronged wife. Her lawyer tried to argue that the transfers of assets were legitimate, that she had the right to do whatever she wanted with her own money. But I brought in the evidence, proof of her planning and her secret meetings with the transfers just days before she filed for divorce and her attempts to hide her real intentions. When I felt a mixture of anger and determination. I told the court how had lied to my face for months, how she'd been secretly transferring money, and how she was trying to screw me out of my inheritance. I explained how I'd trusted her, how I'd built a life with her, only to find out she'd been planning her escape all along. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, scrutinizing the evidence I presented. His lawyer tried to poke holes in my story, but it was clear she was on the defensive. The court took note of her suspicious transfers and her secretive behavior. It was obvious she was trying to hide assets, and the judge made that clear during the hearing. The judge ordered an immediate freeze on her assets and demanded she provide full disclosure of her financial situation. What hit me hardest during that hearing wasn't just the legal fight. It was realizing how much I'd been played for a fool. I'd given her my love, my trust, my future, and she'd used me to get what she wanted. The betrayal cut deep, but I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally fighting back, taking control of the situation. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a chance to reclaim what was mine. In the days that followed, his attitude shifted. She became more bitchy, more manipulative. She tried to gaslight me, saying I was overreacting, that the whole thing was a misunderstanding. But I knew better. I saw her true colors now, and I was determined not to let her win. I hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her movements, just to make sure she wasn't hiding anything else or trying to run away with more of my money. Meanwhile, I started talking to friends and family, trying to get support. A lot of people told me I was crazy for even staying in this mess, but I knew I had to fight. I couldn't let her walk away with everything I'd worked for. The more I fought, the more I realized she was just trying to drag me down emotionally, trying to make me doubt myself. But I refused to give her that power. One day, she got so bitchy and confrontational that I finally snapped. I told her to stop the lies, to stop the manipulation. I told her I knew she'd been cheating, lying, and trying to steal. From me, I said I was done playing her game. That's when she lost her temper, screaming at me, calling me controlling and paranoid again. But I didn't care anymore. I had the evidence, the law on my side, and a new resolve to put an end to this nightmare. The worst part, seeing how she'd become so manipulative, so ruthless just to get her way. She'd lied to my face about everything, about the transfers, her plans to leave, and she thought she could get away with it. But I was done being the fool. I was done trusting her. I knew this was going to be a long, ugly fight, but I was prepared to see it through. I was going to make sure she paid for every lie, every betrayal, every dollar she'd stolen from me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my dignity, my future, and finally putting an end to her treachery. The legal process dragged on longer than I expected, but each day I felt more confident I was getting closer to justice. His attitude only grew more bitchy and aggressive. She'd show up at court, fake tears in her eyes, trying to act like the innocent wife betrayed by a controlling husband. But I caught her in lies every time she opened her mouth. Her attempts to manipulate the judge and the court staff were pathetic. She'd spin stories about how she was just trying to protect her future, how I was trying to ruin her life. But I had the evidence, screenshots, bank statements, witness statements, and I wasn't about to let her gaslight her way out of this. One day, I got a crucial piece of evidence. The lawyer discovered that had been secretly working with her sister, Lisa, to hide assets. They'd created fake invoices, transferred money into Lisa's accounts, and even tried to open new bank accounts under different names to move the money again. It was clear they'd been planning to drain everything from me, to leave me with nothing. When I saw that, I knew I had to act fast. The judge issued a court order to freeze all accounts and assets linked to and Lisa until everything was sorted out. The confrontation with after that was brutal. She was furious, shouting, calling me possessive and jealous again. She accused me of trying to ruin her life, of being paranoid about her talking to. But I just looked her in the eyes and told her I knew everything. I told her lies, her manipulations, her schemes, they were over. I wasn't going to let her steal my inheritance, my house, or my future. I'd fought too hard and I wasn't backing down now. The turning point came when the judge finally scheduled a hearing to evaluate all the evidence. I sat in the courtroom, feeling a mixture of exhaustion and determination. Sat there bitchy and defiant, but I saw through her act. I knew she was panicking inside. I was ready for whatever she threw at me. I had the law, I had the evidence, and I had a burning desire to see her pay for all the pain she'd caused. During the hearing, tried every trick in the book, crying, yelling, pleading. But the judge was firm. He ordered an audit of all her accounts and set a date for the final hearing to decide on the division of assets. Meanwhile, I was working with my lawyer to prepare for the next phase, getting full custody of the house and the inheritance, and ensuring she couldn't hide or transfer any more assets. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief because I was finally taking control, anger because I'd been betrayed so badly. In the days leading up to the final hearings, behavior got even more bitchy. She was trying to bully her way out, threatening to ruin my reputation if I didn't drop the case. She'd call me names, accuse me of being a controlling asshole, and try to make me doubt myself. But I refused to back down. I knew her game. She was desperate, cornered, and losing everything she'd schemed for. I kept my focus, stayed calm, and prepared for the battle ahead. Honestly, I felt like I was fighting not just for the money or the house, but for my dignity. The woman I married, the woman I loved, she was gone. What I was dealing with now was a manipulative, selfish stranger who'd lied to my face for years, but I was done being the victim. I was finally fighting back, and I was determined to come out on top, no matter how dirty she played. Looking back, I realize how much this whole ordeal changed me. I used to believe in trust, in honesty, in building a future together. Now I see how dangerous lies and betrayal can be, but I also see the importance of standing up for yourself, of fighting for what's rightfully yours. Thought she could cheat me out of everything. Her words, her actions, they all proved otherwise. I learned that sometimes the only way to protect yourself is to take control, confront the truth, and never let anyone take advantage of you again. The final court date was intense. Showed up dressed to look innocent, but her bitchy smirk was gone, replaced by desperation. She knew she was losing everything. I sat there, feeling a strange sense of closure, knowing I'd fought tooth and nail to get what was rightfully mine. The judge listened to the final arguments, reviewed all the evidence, and finally made his ruling. It was a long process, but in the end, justice was served. She was ordered to return the transferred assets, and the court declared the inheritance legally mine. The house, the savings, everything I'd built with her, finally, it was going to stay in my name. Tried one last time to spin her lies, to plead her case, but it was too late. The judge saw through her manipulations and pointed out her deceitful behavior. She was ordered to pay court costs and penalties for her fraudulent transfers. Her face twisted in anger and frustration as she realized she'd lost. As I watched her leave the courtroom, I felt a huge weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in months, I could breathe without feeling like I was drowning in betrayal. I knew I'd be okay. It wasn't easy to get here, and I'd lost a lot: trust, my marriage, some savings. But I gained something much more important: clarity and a sense of justice. In the aftermath, I spent time rebuilding. I changed locks, cut ties with completely, and started focusing on myself. The emotional scars still linger, they always will. But I also learned a lot about trust, manipulation, and resilience. I realized that sometimes the biggest betrayal comes from the people you love the most. But I also learned that standing up for yourself, fighting for what's right, and not letting someone steal your future is the only way to truly move on. Looking back, I can say this: I should have seen the signs earlier. Bitchy attitude, her secretive behavior, her lies about those were all red flags I ignored. If I could give advice to anyone in a similar situation, it would be this: trust your gut. Don't let anyone manipulate or steal from you. Protect yourself. Get legal help if you need it, and never underestimate the power of evidence. It's painful to go through betrayal like this, but I'm stronger now. I've learned that even when everything seems to be falling apart, there's always a way to fight back. And in the end, justice isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your future. I'm still healing, but I know I'll come out of this better than before. And for anyone else dealing with betrayal, stay strong. Stand your ground. Don't let them win.